There was another Yugi tuber. Her list was I can't say it was similar to this because you did throw some curveballs in here like Sprite Elf, but she had, and that me saying she kind of limits the amount of Yugi tubers by a lot. She had a card on there, chat, that she deemed toxic, and I think she made a really weak argument. You guys want to hear this? Yeah, that's correct. No, it's not JCD. We didn't talk about that, by the way. Please ban these cards ASAP. Yu-Gi-Oh! The most toxic cards this format. When will they fit? Hold on, I want to see if she hates this format too.
Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I figured we would just have a discussion about the top 5 cards that I feel like are the most toxic in the format right now. I just figured it would be fun to talk about all of this, and I really want to know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. So, starting with the first one that I actually wasn't that sure if I...
Damn, she doesn't say it. Her opinion on tier is that she actually likes tier, but not like the dominance. We'll just skip ahead. Till we get to the card, and you guys can hear her. I think her argument was just bad. Wait, is she real? Do you not know who this is? I watch. I'm subscribed to her. She's like one of the, maybe the only female Yugi tuber that I'm subscribed to. Like, I think her videos are pretty good.
Let's just move on to the next card.
You guys tell me, chat, compelling or not? Well, compelling but not convincing. Actually, it's not even compelling.
Because we're going to talk about a card that actually counters tier, and it's going to be D-Shifter. So I think this...
wow, you misogynist.
This one is going to be like the most controversial on this list, simply because some people that play it obviously are going to defend it like until the end, and they are going to say it's okay and it's healthy almost in a way because it's able to counter the top strategy, which is toxic by...
This card is a... Let her finish.
Itself. But is it really okay when you're countering a toxic strategy with a toxic card, in my opinion?
Yes, because this card is not toxic, and it's definitely not AIDS, as some people in the chat are claiming. Continue.
It's really not. So Shifter obviously makes everything get banished, and also some people might say, well, it has a downside. If you have no cards in your graveyard, you can activate it, but if you do, it's dead. But in my opinion, that's not exactly a downside if you can actually play it in a deck that doesn't care about the graveyard and can actually empty the graveyard for you to be able to activate another Shifter if you happen to draw multiples. So that's not an argument, I think. That's not an...
Okay, here's why I disagree with that. And I feel like I don't think that she dismantled that argument. Her argument is that the downside of Shifter is basically irrelevant, because if you play it in a deck that can manipulate its graveyard, there is no downside. My response to that is, A, show me this deck, because I don't think this deck exists that she just described. I know what she's talking. She's talking about Floowandereeze, which is not true because Floowandereeze can't always do that. If you put a pot card in your graveyard, chat, guess where that pot card's staying? Pretty much for the entire duel. In your graveyard. As far as I know, the only way that they can remove a card like that, like the only way they can really remove cards is with Stree or maybe Ryza, but that's only 2 cards out of the entire deck. Like, usually if you have to start with like a pot card, like, this shit's just stuck in your graveyard. Yeah, they can use Ostrich and they can use like Ryza. But those are very, very specific situations, chat. How many times, guys, have you guys seen a duel where someone draws like Shifter in their second turn and it's just dead for the entire duel? Because I see that a lot. I think Jerome, chat, made this card specifically, and like I think my opinion on Shifter being dead so often would be different if Shifter was like a level 4. If you could just summon this card and start attacking with it, chat, or you could randomly use it for then I'd be like, well, damn, there's like no downside, because even if you draw it dead, you just normal summon it and link it or something like. But that's not it. Once you draw Shifter and it's dead, it's stuck in your hand like forever. There's no way, not even in like Kashtira, can you use it as like a 7. You know what I mean? It's not even useful in a way where it's like, oh, I can trade it with 7-star swords and draw 2 cards. Nope. Once it's in your hand and it's dead for like the entire game. You know what I mean? It's just not a card you can use forever. And I just feel like people don't look at that, chat. Like, why? How come no one looks at that? Mad at a card that 1/30th of decks can play. I heckin' love uninteractable lingering mode. That's to me, that is the strongest argument that she makes. She makes the argument that like Shifter is impossible to stop if you go second. I mean, I give you that. That's pretty much like the only that's like the only argument that I can give you. And even as opposed to like Lancia, it does last multiple turns, excuse me. Lancia is just like one full turn. Gamma, no, I'm not gonna say Gamma. Gamma's like Gamma's the only thing in the game that can like stop it. You know what I mean? Just have Gamma forehead. You know what I mean? What's up, Grinder? How are you? Dark Arm Exceed banish from the graveyard to make Shifter alive again in Kashtira. Hey Grinder, how are you doing tonight? I'm looking at Naya's video. If you know, yeah, well, hold on. You do. I was gonna say if you know, you've been on. I've seen you on her channel before multiple times, so you 100% know her. She's arguing that Dimensional Shifter is a toxic card, and I'm just like, it's not. I just don't see it. Like this is actually, chat. I know people will probably say, Cap, why should I have to deal with not having this is one of those, like, I just don't have sympathy. Like, it's okay, your cards are all banished, like, just deal with it, man. I play fucking Eldritch. This card cripples my deck, but like, you don't see me crying about it. Like, it's just one turn. I've said this before. If you can't live like one turn, chat, without like one little net, like, that's kind of your problem. Because most floodgates, like this and this, and they're not one turn. Like, they just last in perpetuity. They last forever. But it's like Shifter's one turn. And even if you're going to say, Cap, Yu-Gi-Oh is just a one turn game, like even freaking ones like Dweller and the one that I hate, 41. I hate that card. So even 41 is multiple turns. And I don't count this as multiple turns because like your opponent's turn and your turn, like, it's still to me like one turn. It's so toxic, but it's kind of needed for any deck trying to deal with full power tier. So I don't Grinder. I don't like looking at generic cards, like these generic cards that are unsearchable, right? These cards that are not engine, right? Like Shifter's it's not part of any theme. I don't just like looking at these cards in the vacuum of this format, right? Because yes, it's good as an anti-tier card, but like tier won't be here forever. So I'm not someone who's like, oh, well, we should ban Macro Cosmos because it beats my tier deck. Like, but your tier won't be here forever. So I don't want to build my argument around it just being good against tier, or it stops tier, because yeah, tier's here now, but tier won't be here in a year. And it's like, well, if you ban Shifter now, like, you know what I mean? Because it's insane against tier. Like, all right, well, what happens when tier's not played anymore? Now Shifter's just banned. Like, Konami doesn't usually bring cards back immediately. The toxic part is being able to shut down other hand traps like Veiler, Ogre, Droll. Fair enough, but could I not counter that with, what about the hand traps that it doesn't stop? Nibiru, Cypher Gear Gamma, Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, and Joyous Springs. You know what I mean? I feel like there are just as many hand traps that don't need to go to the graveyard as cost. Or that can be, I'll say, can be used without going to the graveyard as, you know, can. So I see that as a good and a bad thing. I'm not buying this, chat.
Excuse, the card is still insanely
If somebody says that like Shifter needs to be banned, like, you got, give me more. Give me a different argument.
insanely busted, because it's almost like unnecessary.
What are we talking about? We're talking about if Dimensional Shifter should be banned or not. I don't see. Time Star Magician searches Shifter. I don't. Macro is fine. Hand Trap Macro is not. It only lasts one turn. It's not permanent. And again, if you draw this card in like your second turn, it's more than likely going to be dead for the entire game. And I feel like the only counter to that is, well, Cap, it won't matter because Yu-Gi-Oh's already decided by the second turn. If that's the counter argument, that like Yu-Gi-Oh's so bad that the game's already over anyways, I guess, but like it could just be dead. You know what I mean? Like you could like lose the game because you drew Shifter and you can't play it, as opposed to if it was, I can't think of another hand trap other than maybe a Cyframe monster that just cannot be like activated. Even Nibiru could hypothetically still be used in outside of the first turns, because your opponent could still pop off again. I mean, it doesn't happen that much, but like Imperm, Valor, Ash, Ogre, like all of those cards can be used under normal circumstances if you draw them as your turn 2 card. But like, you're gonna have something in the graveyard, and then Shifter's just dead for the whole game.
They're evil.
It lasts an entire game if your opponent goes first playing Flu. Well, see, that's your argument is just, well, Yu-Gi-Oh's a one turn game. Your argument is, well, the game will be over by the time Shifter turns off, the game's already. I feel like that's just a problem of Yu-Gi-Oh. Games shouldn't just be one turn. You know, that's just a Yu-Gi-Oh.
To counter the evil, that's Tearlament. But if you're going up against a strategy,
Shifter to 1 feels right. No, that's that's terrible. Then you'll just like never get it, and then people will just cry about it even more. On the off chance that you do get that 1 Shifter, people will just infinitely baby ray, like, you had the 1 Shifter. You know, that's like a Maxita 1. Like, Maxita 1 was way more cancer than it was at 3, because then it's like, well, whoever has that 1 Maxi just wins.
Strategy that utilizes the graveyard and it's not exactly at the power level of Tier, you're just completely auto-winning by utilizing a card like D-Shifter, because they're not going to be able to play. And I think when it comes to cards that...
I don't agree with that, by the way. Chat, does Tier auto lose to Dimensional Shifter? Yes or no? Simple 1-word answer. Does Tier auto lose to Shifter? I feel like anyone who says yes, you're in for a fucking rude awakening. Like, play with, you're in for a fucking, they don't. They don't. Like, that's another, like, I would feel maybe different about it if that was, they don't. They just make fucking 41. And if you don't out 41, like, you just lose. They just all make 41. Seriously, they do not lose to this card, chat. It's frustrating for them. It's a crazy annoyance. But to say that they do not auto lose to this card, they don't. They make Baguska, and then they just pass, and then they basically say, you better out this Baguska, because if you don't, you went neg 1, and we're going to push your you know what in during our turn. That's what happens. Same with Lancia. Shifter feels like Dweller to me, format dependent, but everyone will hate it, and the formats it's good in. Yeah, but Dweller, like, the difference between Dweller and shit, like, Dweller has no downside. What's the downside of Dweller? You have to make it, I guess. Shifter has a downside. I just gave it to you. Like, the downside is, like, you could draw it after your first turn and it could be dead for the entire game. I think Dweller does not have a downside that you have to make. Like, that's every XC monster that it has to active. Like, what's the downside of Dweller? There isn't one. Even Lancia doesn't feel like those cards. This card has a defined downside, chat. If Shifter could be used with cards in your graveyard, I would agree. I'd be like, yo, there's actually no downside to this card. I'm pretty sure Jerome built this into the card because he was like, yeah, there has to be something to balance it. Read my message. I made 41. Guess what it was outed. I don't know how many times. I mean, but how did the Flu player out? Like, they have to out it with usually a non-engine. Like, they can out it with Impermanence. They can out it with Book of Eclipse, which might be popular next format. But my point is, like, those are non-engine cards. That's like, okay, but if they have it, they win. If they don't, they lose. So, I mean, I feel like that's just the luck of the draw. 41 is 50-50. You mean them outing it? No, it's not. They're going to have way less. How many outs is Fluander going to have the 41? Probably like 2 in their deck. They're going to have a card that has the word book in it, and they're going to have Imperm, and like, that's it. None of the other, name the cards then. Like, none of the Flunder cards out it. None of the pots, I guess, can get you to a card. None of the hand, like, none of those cards out it. They can go Prosperity in the 6. They have to have Prosperity then. They need, so, okay, yeah. I think you just built the point. So now they have to have Shifter, plus they have to have another non-engine card. So now you need 2 specific cards. Ultimate Slayer. Hold on for a second. Does Slayer work under Shifter? Send one monster from your graveyard, or send one monster from the extra deck to the graveyard, then target. I guess it happens simultaneously. Nope, it's a cost. 41 isn't guaranteed. Yeah, they get the 41 enough. Sending is a cost. So will this still resolve under shifter? That's what I'm asking. Like, can you still bounce? What's it called? It must send to the graveyard. Because that's what I was thinking. I was like, I feel like that's come up with me. Like, can you do this under shifter and bounce like 41? I just learned that's illegal. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm pretty sure that this is not an out to if you have like it's an out if you don't have shifter, but if shifter's on the field, like this doesn't work. It cannot work. Okay, well there you go. So this doesn't even work. Yeah, I mean you could have Dark Ruler, Book of a. My point is like if they make 41, they don't auto lose to shifter. That's the point that I'm making. You know what I mean? You can say they have Book and they have Dark Ruler, but they still don't auto lose.
Playing overall.
Again, you can go to DB Grinder's channel and you can see Flunder players in that exact position who open with a pot and then they pot into like 6 cards and then they're just more Flunder cards. You'll see games where they get the Imperm or they get the Dark Ruler and win, but you'll see games where they don't, you know.
It's just too much. It's unfair, it's unhealthy, and it just shouldn't be happening. So Shifter, in my opinion, is one of the most toxic cards, even though it's very important to counter the top strategy. But I still don't think that makes the card any more, I guess, justifiably played, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm making sense. It's also very hard to negate because if they play it during your turn, you're going to have something like Called By, which is a 1 anyway, or Gamma. But if they play their turn, you can only have Gamma. There's literally nothing to negate the shifter. So if it gets dropped, you're just done. And it is non-engine, it is unsearchable, so there's that. But there is very little that you can do under shifter. Like and tier tries, they make Baguska and stuff sometimes, but it's like, it may not be enough.
She's a European, Chad. I think she's German or something, or she's some type of European, so yeah.
Enough.
Come on, give her a break.
And at that point, you are probably losing. Because shifter is insanely oppressive, and it's insanely strong, and in my opinion, it's a bit too toxic. So.
I'm just gonna say this. She did not sway me on her argument. If this was the Cap, we need to get shifter out of the game argument, and I was in charge of the ban, you didn't sell me on it. Like, I'm not banning shifter. You just didn't. Anime Night says I'm part German. Nice. The new Gravekeeper spell is way more toxic than shifter. I think I know what you're saying. You're talking about the one from Photon Hypernova. I mean, I won't speak on that, but I don't really understand all the hate for this card. It's at 2 in the OCG, so I guess that gives people, they feel like that is credence to the argument of like hitting shifter. I just don't see it, chat. I mean, I get it. More decks can play like, actually, hold on. I think Selza or someone showed me, chat. Someone posted a Puri deck profile that had shifter in it, chat, and I was like, "Yo, Puri can play shit. That's kind of nice." So yeah, I don't even think that sways me. Like, so what that every deck can play fucking ass. Like, every deck can play every hand trap. Like, so what?